If I told you a single line in an old contract saved my entire life, would you believe me? Because I didn't believe it either. Not until the day my best friend almost destroyed everything we built. My name is Mike, and for most of my life, I thought loyalty was simple. You trust the people you care about. You build with them. You don't question their intentions. And for a long time that worked. Or at least I thought it did. I run a small home renovation business in Denver. Nothing fancy. Just honest work, steady clients, and a reputation we fought to build. And when I say we, I mean me and my partner Evan. He wasn't just a coworker. He wasn't just a business partner. He was the guy I survived college with. We were broke together, laughed together, failed together, and somehow convinced ourselves we could run a company one day. Back then, it felt like a crazy dream. Two kids with big ideas and bigger confidence. But somehow we made it real. We started with one truck, one set of tools, and way too much hope. And slowly, things grew. We got jobs. We got clients. We got respect. And the whole time, I believed we were building something as a team, like brothers. I still remember the day we signed our partnership contract. It was supposed to be quick and easy. We were in a small office, sitting in chairs that squeaked every time we moved. I remember Evan laughing, saying, "Man, this feels too official for two guys who barely know how to run a business." We both joked through the whole thing. It felt unnecessary, almost funny, like we were pretending to be more professional than we actually were. Then Evan pointed at a random clause. Some line about future competing companies and full disclosure. He nudged me with his elbow and said, "Let's throw it in, just in case." I laughed. I didn't ask questions. I didn't think twice. Why would I? This was Evan, my friend. My brother in everything but blood. The guy I trusted more than I trusted myself sometimes. You don't look at someone like that and expect the worst. You don't read contracts preparing for betrayal. You read them like a formality, a box to check so you can get back to work. Looking back now, I should have read every line twice. But in that moment, signing that contract felt like taking the next step in a journey we'd started years earlier. We were excited. We were hopeful. And we believed we'd always stay on the same side. For a long time, things stayed good. The business grew. We hired people. We upgraded equipment. We got steady enough to actually breathe without worrying the whole company would fall apart. Those were good years. Safe years. Years that made me believe loyalty never changes. But life has a strange way of teaching you the truth. Sometimes gently. Sometimes not. And sometimes, the things you never expect, the things you're sure will never matter, become the very things that decide everything. I didn't know it then. But the day we signed that contract, we wrote the beginning of our future. And buried inside that stack of papers, sitting quietly on page 9, was a single line, one line I didn't look at twice, that would end up saving everything I built, because years later, when Evan made a move I never saw coming, that forgotten clause would become the only thing standing between my business and complete disaster. And trust me, the storm he brought didn't show up with noise. It came quietly. Just like betrayal always does. You ever feel someone drifting away before you even know why? That's how it started with Evan. For years, Evan and I moved in sync. Same goals, same drive, same vision for the business. But one morning, without warning, something felt different. Not loud, not obvious. Just different. The kind of change you can't explain, but you feel deep in your chest. At first, it was small things. Evan started taking private phone calls, real private. The moment his phone rang, he'd step outside, close the door gently behind him, and lower his voice like he didn't want me hearing even a breath of what he was saying. I remember thinking, maybe it's personal. Maybe he's dealing with something. But the strange part? He never had anything to say when he walked back in. No explanation. No smile. Just a tight nod, and he'd get back to work like nothing happened. Then he began showing up earlier than me. And that was unusual. Evan was never the 7 a.m. ready-to-work type. But suddenly, he was in the office before sunrise. Laptop open. Coffee finished. And the moment I walked in, he'd closed the screen like I just interrupted something important. It didn't stop there. He started leaving late too. Long after the rest of the team went home. I'd catch a glimpse of him under the glow of his monitor, typing quickly. Clicking through spreadsheets he didn't want me to see. And every time I walked toward his desk. Click, laptop shut. Almost too fast. At first, I told myself it was stress. Maybe he was trying to take more responsibility. But if that was true, why did it look like he was hiding something instead of helping? That's when the mistakes began. Invoices didn't match. Payments weren't recorded. Clients who always paid on time started asking why their receipts looked different. I spent half my nights redoing paperwork Evan had already done, wondering how a guy who used to be so careful could suddenly get everything wrong. But when I'd ask him about it, he'd give me vague answers. Oh, must have been a glitch. Maybe I was distracted. Don't worry, man, I'll fix it. Yet nothing got fixed. In fact, things got worse. Evan's behavior became unpredictable. Some mornings he'd show up overly friendly, like he was trying too hard, bringing me coffee, laughing at every joke, complimenting things he never cared about before. But other days, he'd barely speak to me. He'd avoid eye contact, answer questions with one-word responses, and act like he couldn't wait to get away from me. It felt like living with two different versions of the same person. But the real turning point, the moment my stomach dropped, came from a client. A longtime customer pulled me aside after a project and asked me quietly, "Hey Mike, is everything okay between you and Evan?" He mentioned side arrangement, something separate. Is that true? My heart froze for a second. A side arrangement? With who? For what? I forced a smile, pretended everything was fine, and told the client I'd look into it. But inside, something tightened. Something dark and heavy. Something I couldn't shake no matter how much I tried. That night, I sat alone in the office long after everyone left. I stared at the empty chairs, the unfinished paperwork, the space where Evan usually sat. And I felt this strange pressure in my chest. A warning. A whisper. It didn't make sense yet. I didn't have proof. I didn't even know what I was scared of, but I knew one thing. It was like I could feel the betrayal before I could see it. And deep down, I felt the quiet beginning of something I wasn't ready to face. They say the truth leaves a trail, even when someone tries to hide it. And I was about to follow a trail Evan never wanted me to find. After that client mentioned a side arrangement, something inside me changed. I stopped brushing things off. I stopped making excuses for Evan. I started looking closer. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. It began with small checks, harmless checks, the kind you make when you just want peace of mind. I opened our shared server logs. I clicked through old emails. I looked at project files, schedules, anything that might calm the storm building inside my chest. But instead of peace, I found questions. Invoices were filed twice, once correctly, once with small changes. Some payments were missing entirely, but marked as processed. Vendor notes didn't match our orders. It was like someone had taken our clean system and twisted it quietly. Line by line, I stared at the screen, feeling my breath freeze. Was Evan behind this? Or was I letting fear create shadows where there were none? Am I imagining things? I asked myself that more times than I'd like to admit. I kept trying to convince myself it was all a misunderstanding. A software glitch. A mistake anyone could make. But the deeper I looked, the more the puzzle started forming a shape I didn't want to see. One late afternoon, When the office was quiet and most of the team had already left, I opened our email history. At first, everything looked normal. Standard client follow-ups, scheduling notes, estimates, but then I saw it, a small thread buried deep in the archive. Subject line, next steps for transition. Sent from Evan's account. My chest tightened. I clicked it open, feeling a cold rush run through me. Inside. Evan thanked a client, one of our clients, for their loyalty and patience during a transition to a new service provider. He promised them the same quality, the same pricing, just under a different arrangement. Different arrangement? Transition? New provider? What did that mean? I scrolled further and found more. Another email. Then another. All with the same tone, gentle, reassuring, and completely wrong. He was encouraging them to follow him somewhere. Somewhere I wasn't invited. Each message felt like a quiet blow I didn't see coming. My throat tightened as I read line after line. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a glitch. This was intentional. The unease I had been ignoring slowly turned into something heavier. Something closer to fear. Fear that everything we worked for, everything I trusted, was slipping into someone else's hands. I pushed away from the desk and stared at the wall, trying to steady myself. How long had he been doing this? How many clients had he approached? Why didn't he just tell me? And then the truth sank in, a truth that hit harder than anything else. He wasn't preparing for our company's future. He was preparing for his own. Every private call, every early morning, every late night, every closed laptop. They finally made sense. He wasn't trying to fix the business. He wasn't trying to grow it. He was trying to walk away with it, quietly, cleanly, leaving me behind with bills, responsibilities, and a hollow company. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding, realizing I was standing at the edge of something much bigger than a simple disagreement. This was a hidden path, carefully built, step by step, and I had just taken the first steps down it, and deep down, I knew. This trail was only going to get darker from here. Some betrayals shout, but the ones that hurt the most, they whisper. And Evan's whisper was about to hit me like a storm. After finding those strange emails, I knew I couldn't stop digging. Not now, not when the truth was starting to show its face. So the next morning, long before sunrise, I walked into the office, sat down at my desk, and opened our shared cloud drive. I told myself I was just looking for answers. But deep down, I already feared what I was going to find. At first, everything looked normal. Same folders, same names, same layout we had used for years. But then something new caught my eye, a folder tucked away inside a deeper directory. A folder I didn't remember creating. It didn't have a clear name, nothing obvious. Just a quiet plain title, Planning. It looked harmless. But the moment I clicked it open, my whole world shifted. Right at the top was a document called Transition Plan. Phase 1. My heart sank. I clicked it. Inside was a full layout of what Evan had been preparing for months. Step-by-step instructions on how to slowly move clients over to a new service. Notes on timing, notes on messaging, notes on minimizing confusion during the transition. He wrote it like he was planning a smooth upgrade, not a quiet escape. I scrolled further, my hands shaking. There were timelines, actual timelines, detailing how he intended to dissolve our partnership. It wasn't vague. It wasn't something he wrote once and forgot. He had updated it, adjusted it, polished it. And the dates. The dates showed this wasn't a new idea. He'd been working on it while we were celebrating new clients, while we were shaking hands with customers, while I was trusting him with our future. Then I found the final piece, the one that made my breath stop, a folder labeled New Company Registration. Inside were documents with the state seal, applications, approvals, everything he needed to start his own business. But not just any business. It was almost a copy of ours, same services, same structure, same target clients. He wasn't just leaving. He was replacing us. And then came the part that hurt the most. In one document, there was a financial breakdown, numbers that showed what would happen after the partnership dissolution. It listed debts, unpaid invoices, loans, and right next to them my name. Not his, mine, because according to his plan, I was supposed to be the one left holding the weight. He'd slip out quietly, walk into a fresh new company, and take our best clients with him. Shock washed over me first, cold, heavy, suffocating. Then came heartbreak, the kind that sits on your chest and refuses to move. And right after that, anger. A slow, burning anger that didn't shout, didn't explode, but filled every part of me with something sharp and undeniable. I stared at the screen, trying to understand how someone I trusted like a brother could spend months preparing to walk away from everything we built and leave me standing alone in the wreckage. His betrayal wasn't loud. It wasn't messy. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, cold, methodical, the kind that sneaks up on you while you're still believing in loyalty. I closed the laptop gently, even though my hands were shaking. I felt crushed. But underneath that pain, something stronger was forming. Determination. If Evan thought he could walk out and leave me broken, he didn't know me at all. I wasn't ready to confront him yet. I wasn't ready to explode or demand answers, but I was ready for one thing, to figure out my next move. Because now, I wasn't just fighting for my company. I was fighting for the truth. Sometimes the thing that saves you isn't strength. It's a sentence you forgot you signed. After finding Evan's hidden plans, I barely slept. My mind kept replaying every moment we'd shared, every joke, every late-night brainstorming session, every handshake that felt like a promise. I couldn't understand how someone I trusted so deeply could spend months building a future without me. But instead of breaking me, that pain pushed me towards something I had ignored for years, our partnership contract. Early the next morning, before anyone else arrived, I pulled the old binder from the bottom drawer of my desk. The edges were worn, the paper starting to yellow a little. We signed it so long ago, it felt like part of another lifetime. I opened it slowly, almost afraid of what I might find, not because I expected a miracle, but because I needed clarity. I needed something solid to hold onto when everything else felt shaky. Page after page, I read through the terms we agreed on. Revenue splits, responsibilities, ownership rights. All the standard stuff. But then I saw it, a clause we added at the last minute. One Evan himself had pushed for. One he had laughed about, saying, "Let's throw it in, just in case." Back then, it felt unnecessary. We were friends. Why think about competing companies? Why imagine a world where one of us would walk away? But now, the words hit me like a bolt of truth. If either partner creates a competing company, they must disclose it and offer a be-out opportunity before approaching any clients. I read it twice, then again, and again. Because suddenly, everything made sense. Evan hadn't just broken trust. He broke the contract. He violated the one line that tied him legally, financially, and professionally to me. He didn't disclose anything. He didn't offer a be-out. He approached clients behind my back. He created a full competing company in secret. He didn't just cross a line, he erased it, and in that moment, something inside me shifted. The shock I'd been carrying started to fade. The hurt was still there, but it wasn't controlling me anymore. Something else took its place. Calm, focus, power. Because now, I wasn't just a betrayed partner trying to piece together a broken story. I was someone holding the document that could shut down Evan's entire plan. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt the ground under my feet again. I flipped through the rest of the contract, checking every detail like a detective rebuilding a case. And the more I read, the clearer it became. Evan hadn't just underestimated me. He overestimated how well he hid things. This clause gave me leverage. Legal leverage. Technical leverage. The kind of leverage that didn't require shouting, or fighting, or making a scene. All I needed was patience. And timing. I closed the binder slowly, sliding my hand over the cover, feeling something I hadn't felt in days, certainty. The betrayal still hurt. I won't pretend it didn't, but now instead of drowning in it, I had something to hold on to. Something real. Something binding, and one thought echoed through my mind, clear as a bell. He thought he'd outsmarted me. But he forgot the one thing he signed. I leaned back in my chair, breathing deeply, letting that truth settle into my bones. Evan had built his new company, behind my back, but I had just found the one thing he couldn't hide from, and I knew. This was only the beginning. Betrayal may be quiet. But revenge? Revenge can be silent too, and far sharper. After discovering the contract clause Evan tried to pretend didn't exist, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was focused, clear, ready. But I knew one thing for sure: if I rushed in, if I confronted him too early, he'd slip away, and his plan would still go through. I needed help. Quiet help. Smart help. So the next morning, I called someone I never thought I'd involve in something like this, a lawyer I trusted completely. We met in a small office across town, away from everyone we knew. I laid everything out in front of her: the documents, the emails, the timelines, the secret company registration, and most importantly, the contract clause Evan insisted on years ago. She listened quietly, flipping through the pages with the kind of calm that made me feel like I wasn't losing my mind after all. When she finally looked up, she said, "Mike, he violated almost every protection you two signed. You have more power here than he realizes." Those words hit me hard. Not in a painful way, but in a grounding way. Like I had been floating in confusion for weeks and suddenly landed on solid ground. Together we crafted a plan, not loud, not dramatic, but precise. Step 1. Freeze certain business accounts legally. Not all of them. Just the ones tied directly to ownership and operations. Nothing Evan could claim was personal. Just enough to stop money from being quietly moved or hidden. Enough to keep the company safe until the truth came out. Step 2. Secure client contracts. I reached out to every client we had long-standing deals with. Calm, friendly check-ins. Updated paperwork. New agreements that required my approval for any major changes. Things Evan couldn't undo without setting off alarms. Step 3. Gather proof, real proof, from Evan's hidden files. Every email he sent behind my back. Every invoice he changed. Every document for his new company. Everything he created while pretending we were partners. I organized it all into a single airtight folder. Evidence he couldn't deny. Evidence that spoke louder than any confrontation ever could. And through all of this, I didn't confront him. Not yet. Because the strangest thing happened as my plan came together. Evan grew bolder. Almost confident. Like he believed he'd already won. He took more private calls. Left the office earlier. Walked past me without the slightest bit of worry. He acted like I was clueless. Like I was blindly walking toward the trap he built. And honestly, that helped me. Because the more confident he became, the clearer his next move looked. He didn't know I'd been preparing for weeks. He didn't know I had the clause. He didn't know every step he took was being documented. Watching him act so sure, so smug, should have made me angry. But instead, it made me calm. Almost peaceful. Because I knew the truth. He was digging his own downfall. Quietly, there's a moment when betrayal stops hurting and starts motivating you. A moment when the pain turns into resolve. And as I looked at the full plan we built, the accounts protected, the clients secured, The evidence organized, one thought echoed in my mind louder than all the rest. If he wanted a quiet betrayal, he was about to face a quiet storm. And I was ready. There's a moment in every betrayal where everything shifts. And the person who thought they were in control finally learns the truth. It happened on a Thursday morning, the kind of morning where nothing feels unusual until suddenly everything does. I walked into the office and saw an email from Evan with the subject line, "Emergency Team Meeting, 10 a.m." My heart didn't rush. My hands didn't shake. Not anymore, because I knew exactly what this meeting was supposed to be. This was his moment. His exit plan. His grand reveal where he'd quietly slide out of the company and take our clients with him. He had no idea. I was already miles ahead of him when 10 a.m. came. Everyone gathered in our small conference room. The team looked confused. They had no idea what was happening. And then Evan walked in with this forced smile, carrying a folder that he held a little too tightly, like it contained his new beginning. But before he could speak, I gently placed my folder on the table. He froze. His smile slipped just a little, and I saw something shift in his eyes, the first hint of panic. "Evan," I said calmly, "before you start, I think we need to look at a few things." He tried to laugh it off. Today's not really about documents. Mike, I just want to." I opened my folder. Inside was everything he didn't want the world to see. Printed emails, client messages, server logs, the transition plan he hid deep in the cloud drive, the new company registration he filed behind my back, piece by piece. I laid them across the table like puzzle pieces falling into place. The room went silent. Evan's face turned pale, like every ounce of confidence drained out of him at once. He didn't say a word. He just stood there staring at the documents, blinking fast. Like if he blinked enough times they would disappear. Then I slid the final page across the table, the one that ended everything. The contract clause he insisted on years ago, highlighted, clear, undeniable. If either partner creates a competing company, I read out loud, they must disclose it and offer a buyout opportunity before approaching any clients. My voice wasn't angry. It wasn't shaky. It was steady, the kind of steady that comes from someone who finally knows the truth. "You didn't disclose anything," I continued. "You didn't offer a buyout. You approached clients in secret, and you built a company behind my back." Every sentence hit the room like a soft hammer. No yelling, no drama, just truth. Cold, clear, devastating truth. Evan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Not an excuse, not an apology, not even a denial. He was speechless, fully exposed. The team watched in stunned silence. And for the first time, Evan realized he wasn't the one in control anymore. His quiet betrayal wasn't quiet now. It was right there in the open, undeniable. I closed the folder gently, almost kindly, and said, "Evan, according to the contract, you can't continue here. Not after all this." The lawyer had already prepared everything. The accounts were secured. Clients were protected. The evidence was solid. All I had to do was enforce the contract he signed. In that moment, Evan's entire plan collapsed. Not with shouting, not with anger, just with truth. He gathered his things slowly, avoiding everyone's eyes, and walked out of the building, the same building we built together from nothing. And as the door closed behind him, I wasn't relieved. Not yet, but I knew something important. This was the moment everything turned. Not because he tried to leave, but because he finally realized he couldn't. When a storm ends, the world doesn't go quiet right away. It takes time to hear yourself again. After Evan walked out of that conference room, the silence he left behind was heavier than any argument we could have had. There was no shouting, no big dramatic scene, no slamming doors. Just the sound of someone's plan collapsing under the weight of truth. He stepped down that same day. He didn't fight it. He didn't negotiate. He knew the contract had boxed him in, and the evidence was impossible to escape. Watching him pack up his desk, I felt something strange, not victory, not relief. Something closer to sadness. Because betrayal doesn't just break trust. It breaks the memories attached to it. Every photo on the wall, every old project folder, every inside joke suddenly felt different. Like they belonged to a different lifetime. But even with that weight pressing on my chest, I knew I couldn't sit in it. The company needed me. The team needed direction. The clients needed reassurance, so I went to work. The first few weeks were rough, long days, early mornings, and conversations that felt more like damage control than business. Clients wanted answers. Employees wanted stability. Vendors wanted promises that everything would stay steady. And I gave them all the same truth. We're rebuilding. We're moving forward. And we're stronger than you think. Piece by piece, things settled. We updated our branding, clarified responsibilities, strengthened our system so nothing could slip through cracks again. Slowly, clients returned with trust. Slowly, the team found their rhythm. Slowly. I felt like the ground was solid again. But I won't pretend it was easy. There were nights I sat alone in my office long after everyone left, staring at old files and wondering how close I came to losing everything. How close I came to being replaced. How close I came to being pushed out of my own dream. It's a strange thing, realizing the person you trusted most was planning to leave you behind quietly. It hits you deeper than you expect. Some mornings, I woke up with that same tight feeling in my chest, remembering the hidden folder, the secret emails, the quiet lies, but each day that passed, the hurt softened. The company felt like mine again. The people around me felt loyal again. And that mattered more than anything Evan tried to take. One moment in particular stands out, a month after everything happened. I stood in the workshop watching the team finish a project. They were laughing, planning the next steps, working together like nothing had ever shaken us. And I realized something important. I didn't lose everything. I almost did. But almost is not the same as gone. Justice didn't come from shouting. It didn't come from dramatic actions. It came quietly, the same way betrayal arrived, through truth, patience, and the contract I once thought didn't matter. Looking back now, I understand the kind of lesson life was pushing toward me. Betrayal isn't loud. Sometimes it whispers. And sometimes, your protection is a contract you forgot you signed. I'm not thankful for what Evan did. No betrayal deserves gratitude. But I am grateful for what I learned. Protect your work. Protect your dreams. And never assume loyalty can replace clarity. Life didn't snap back instantly. But it did stabilize, honestly, slowly, and in a way that made me stronger than I ever expected to be. I never thought a quiet betrayal could change my whole life. But it did. And it taught me lessons I wish I had learned sooner. Looking back at everything that happened, the lies, the hidden folders, the secret company, the quiet plan Evan built behind my back, I realized something I never expected. Not every betrayal arrives with noise. Sometimes it walks in softly, smiling, pretending everything is fine. And that's what makes it dangerous. For a long time I believed trust was enough. I believed that loyalty alone could protect what we built. I believed that friendship was stronger than temptation, opportunity, or ambition. But life taught me a different truth. Trust is powerful, but so is caution. You can trust people with your time. You can trust them with small decisions. You can trust them with memories and stories and moments. But when it comes to your future, your dreams, your business, your hard work, trust should never stand alone. It should always have a partner, protection. I used to think contracts were there only for strangers. But now I understand something deeper. Contracts exist because even good people can change. Even close people can drift. Even the person you call your brother can take a quiet turn you never saw coming. And that doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. What happened with Evan didn't just break my trust. It broke the illusion that loyalty can stand without structure. And it showed me something even more important. Always protect what you build, not out of fear, not out of suspicion, but out of respect for yourself, for your work, for the future you're trying to create. Because betrayal doesn't need to be loud to be destructive. It doesn't need dramatic scenes or shouting matches. Sometimes it looks like a private phone call, a hidden folder, a message you weren't meant to see. Sometimes it's quiet enough that you almost miss it. And sometimes it's quiet enough to nearly ruin everything. But here's the part that truly stayed with me. Written agreements matter, even between friends. I know it sounds cold. I know it sounds harsh. But that one clause, that single line I forgot existed, saved me from losing my business, my stability, and maybe even my direction in life. That clause was more loyal to me than the person who asked me to sign it. It protected me when trust couldn't. It spoke when I didn't have the words. It stood strong when everything else fell apart. And the truth is, I'm grateful it existed, not because I expected betrayal, but because I needed protection when betrayal arrived. As things stabilized, as the noise faded, as I rebuilt the company into something honest again, I kept thinking back to all the signs I ignored. The quiet shifts, the small mistakes, the strange behavior. I wish I could say I spotted the betrayal early, but I didn't. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Hope for loyalty, but prepare for truth. Because loyalty is beautiful until it isn't. And truth? Truth will always show itself, even if it arrives quietly. So that's what I carry with me now. Not bitterness, not regret, just understanding. Trust people, but protect your work. Care for others, but care for your future too. And never forget, sometimes the line that saves you is the one you almost ignored. If this story hit you the way it hit me, don't leave just yet. Make sure you subscribe. Because every week I share real stories of betrayal, justice, and the quiet strength it takes to rise again. And if you've ever faced a silent storm of your own, leave a comment. Your story might help someone else survive theirs.